Hello everyone, welcome you all. In the today's video, we are going to learn how we can read data from MySQL database and we'll write the same data on MS Excel file. Okay. So to do this, we need to have some basic knowledge on JDBC from Java and then we can do that. So let me show you how we can achieve this. So let me go to my Eclipse and this is a project which we already created, Apache POI, and inside this I have one package called Excel operations. Now inside this, I'm going to create a new class and I will name it as database to Excel. Let's take a main method and say finish. Okay, so now I have created a new class. So we need to do this step by step. So as a first step, so what we have to do is first we need to establish a connection with the database. Then we have to get the data from the table. And after that, we'll write the same data into the MS Excel. Okay. So to work with the database operations, we need a concept of JDBC, Java Database Connectivity. So in which what we can do is we have to download a specific driver for the database. Like suppose if you are working with Oracle, we need to download Oracle driver, Oracle JDBC driver. Or if you are working on MySQL, you have to download MySQL JDBC driver. And similarly, whichever database you are currently working on, you have to download that particular driver. And that driver will be available in the form of jar file, which gives us number of classes and methods. And by using those classes and methods, we can interact with the database and database tables. So that is a prerequisite which we have to do before getting the data from the database. So here I have MySQL database and I'll try to read the data from the MySQL. So we need MySQL driver. Okay, so let me show you how we can get the MySQL driver. So if you are working on Maven project, then you can directly go to mavenrepository.com and here search for MySQL JDBC and which will give you this one MySQL connector. And if you are working on Maven project, you can get the dependency for Pom.xml. XML. You can just add this dependency to the Pom.xml. XML. Then this will have some number of classes you can use it. And if you are working with a normal Java project, right? So without using Maven, then you can just directly download this jar file. So if I just click on this jar file, which will download MySQL connector, I can just keep it and then I show you the folder. And this is the driver which we have downloaded. So I already kept this driver somewhere in my drivers folder. I can go to the drivers and DB driver. So this is my connector. So 8.0.16 I have. So rest of other drivers are for other databases. So we need only one jar file, which is basically used for connecting to the database. The driver is required. So once you add this driver to your project build path, then we will get some additional classes and methods by which we can interact with the database. Now let's go to Eclipse and in this particular project, I need to add that particular driver because we are going to do database operation. So how we can add that jar file? Just right click on the project, go to properties and Java build path. And here you can see so many jars we already added under library section. And here you have to just add external jars and then select the jar file, which is MySQL connector, say open. So once you added this jar file and then I say apply and close. All right, so now we have added jar file to this particular project. Now we can interact with the database. So as a first step, what you have to do is we need to connect to the database. The first step is connect to the database. So how to connect to the database? So before that, as a prerequisite, you need to have database installed. So I already have MySQL database in my machine. So I already connected and these are the different databases I have in my MySQL. And let me open the query editor. So here I can execute all the SQL commands. So I have one database called world database. I'm connecting to that, use world, and when I execute this command, which will connect to the database through this client, and there are multiple tables are available. So let me just select one table. I'll say select a star from, I have one table called locations. So if I execute this, which will give you the data here. Okay, now you can just look at this. Now I have some data in my table. So I want to read this data from this locations table and then I'll write the same data to the Excel file. Okay, that's my concept. So I already have this database and whole database which contains a table, and table is also having some data. Okay. Now, so first we need to establish the connection to the database. So to establish the connection to the database, we have a method called driver manager. So these classes are comes from the JDBC driver. Okay, driver manager is a class. Inside this, we have a method called get connection, and here we have to provide the connection URL. So the connection URL will be different from one database to another database. So for MySQL, I'm just giving the connection URL like this. This is my connection URL. JDBC colon MySQL colon slash slash, and currently MySQL database is present in my local machine. So I'm just saying localhost. And if our MySQL database is installed in your remote machines, then you can pass the name of the machine, or you can pass the IP address of that particular machine. And there's a port number on which the database is running, and world is a database name which I am going to connect, and the root is a username, and other root is a password, right? So this is a connection string. So by using this connection string, driver manager dot get connection will connect to the database and return the connection. So once it is written the connection, we have to refer that connection by using a variable called connection type variable. So this is again predefined class which we have to import from java.sql package, and driver manager get connection will throw some exception. Just add this. So with this, we have established the connection to the database and refer that connection by using con. This is a variable. So after that, through this particular connection, I have to execute our statement. So whatever query we have triggered from the client here, the same query I want to trigger from a Java program. So to run that particular query, we have to prepare one query statement. Okay, so we can say statement, or we have to prepare one query. So to do that, we have a special class called statement class, and stmt refer some variable, and this statement we have to execute through this connection object. So take the con dot, there is a method called execute query. Con dot, let me write this. Con is my connection, dot, there is a method called execute query. It's not giving, just a moment. So we have imported correct packages. Okay, let me just try once again. So con dot, there is a method called not execute query, actually create statement. Okay, so we have to first create a statement, and through that object we can execute query. So con dot create statement, and which will return a statement variable, statement object, statement stmt. Now we have to import this statement from java.sql, and through this statement we have to execute our query. So for that I can say stmt dot, here we have a method called execute query. So always we can execute select statement with this method execute query, and whatever query we want to execute to get the data, we have to run this query. Select star from locations. So this is a query I have executed. So once we have executed this query, which will return the results. So to store the results, we can create one more variable called result set object. I say result set rs. Now we can also import this result set from java.sql. Okay. So I have established the connection to the database, and then I created statement object, and through the statement object, I have executed my select query, which will return the result set. Now the result set contains all the records, all the rows and columns from the table. So with this, we have done with the database connections. Now the next step is whatever data we are getting into this particular variable, we have to write this data into the Excel file. So we have to create a new Excel file now. So let me just create one Excel file. So to create a new Excel file, we need to start with workbook. We have to first create an empty workbook. Then we have to create an empty sheet. Then we have to create a rows and cells, and then we can write this data into those cells. So let me just create one empty workbook. I say XSS I say workbook, and I say workbook object equal to new XSS workbook. Okay, now this will create an empty workbook. So just import this. Now inside this workbook, I'm going to create a sheet. So workbook dot, I say create a sheet, and I'll give some name to the sheet. So the sheet name is, I say locations, I say locations data. Okay, so this is my name I have given. So once we created the sheet, then we can write all the result set data into that particular sheet in the form of rows and columns. But here, if I just look at this database, there are some headers are there. So location ID, street address, postal code, all these things. So I will write all this header part as part of the first row in the Excel file. So what I will do is I will just create one row, XSS F row, and I'll create a row object equal to, inside the sheet, I'm going to create a new row. So I say create row. So this will create a new row. And which row it is? 0 row, the first row which will create. And sheet is a, this, we created one sheet, right? That sheet we have to refer with some variable XSS F sheet, and sheet equal to. Now we use this sheet object to create a row, and we have to store this in some other variable called a row variable. So inside the workbook, we created a new sheet, and inside the sheet, I have created my first row. Inside the row, I will write the headings part. So inside this first row, I will write the headings. So how to write the headings? Row dot create cell. So create first cell, referring with the 0, dot set cell value. Set cell value. So the first header is location underscore ID. So I say location underscore ID. Similarly, I'll create multiple cells in the same row. How many columns we have in this? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 columns are there. So totally 6 headers I will create. So this is 1, 2, 3, and 4. 3, 4, 5. And there is one more header I'll create. This is a 5 because we have started from 0. So location ID is a first header, and the street address, street underscore address. So this is one more, and the third column is postal underscore code, and the next column is city, next column is state underscore provenance. Okay, and the last one is country underscore ID, country underscore ID. So these are the column names I have created in the first row of the sheet. So header part is done. And now we have to write the data which we have captured into result set. Okay, so this particular data we have to write into the rest of the rows and columns. So for that, what I will do is I'll take one while loop. Okay, so I'll take one while loop, and inside the while loop, I will read the data from this RS, because RS contains multiple rows and columns. So I will read each and every row from this RS, that means result set. I will write the data into every row in the sheet. Okay, so here I use one method called rs.next. So what this method will do is rs.next, which will verify the next record is available or not. If it is available, the condition becomes true. After that, we can extract that value. So from this rs, so first time it will get the first record. So rs.next condition is true. Then from that, the first record we have to extract rs dot. So what is the first record means? First row. So first row location ID, street address, postal code, city, state, provincial, country ID. So these are the values we need to capture into different variables. So it depends upon the type of data. So if I just look at here, I will describe the table so that I will know exact what are the columns, data types they have mentioned for the columns. I say describe locations. When I execute this command, which will give you what type of data stored in this. And the first column, we have a decimal type of data, and there's a number, and rest of the columns we have varchar. So varchar in the sense string type of data. So rs dot, the first column data is a number data, a decimal data. So I say rs dot, they have to use one method called get double. Get double, and here we have to exactly specify the column name. This column name should be exactly matched with the here column name in the table. So location ID. So this is our location ID. So what this will give you, this will return the value of the location ID and store that value in a variable. Double, I'll say location underscore ID. I just created one variable. Similarly, we have to also capture the data from other columns. So the second column is street underscore address. This is street underscore address. And the type of data is varchar, that means a string. So here we use one method called getString method, and which will return a string type of data, and this is basically street address. So the variable is, I define one variable called street add. Right. Similarly, I can also capture other columns data from the same row. So the next one is postal code, city, state, province, and country. So one by one, I can specify that. After street address, we have a postal code, and this is a one variable I created, postal code. And after postal code, we have a city, and this I want to store in one more variable called city. And let me copy this. So after city, we have state, province, and country. So state, province, and the variable is, I say state pro. This is my variable. And the last column which we have is country ID. So this is our country ID, and store that into some other variable. I say country underscore, or I say country ID. So in this, what we have done is we have capturing the data from result set and read each and every column data and store them into these variables. So now I got the data of the first row in a table. So as soon as we got the data from the first row, we have to send this data, or we have to write this data into the Excel sheet. Okay. So for that, what we will do is, we already created one sheet here, and also we created 0 row. Inside the 0 row, we have written the headers. Now we have to start from the first row to write all these data. Okay. So what I will do is, here I will create one more row, sheet dot create row of 1, and I no need to store anything. So sheet dot create row of 1. So once you created one row, inside the same row, I use one method called set cell value. Set cell value. So what this method will do is, we can set some value into the particular cell. So create row, inside the row we have to create a cell, right? So create row, sheet dot create row of 1. In the row, particular row, we have to create a cell. So how to create a cell? I say create cell. So create cell, and you have to specify the cell number. And here set cell value method I have to use. Set cell value. Which value you have to set? Location ID. Location ID. So this row we have created, and inside the row itself we created one cell, and set cell value is this one. And this row number, every time we will change, because we got only first row here, and we have to write all this data in the first row. After writing the data, we have to repeat the rows. So instead of specifying the row here, I'll store this row in a variable XSS row equal to. This is representing our current row, and instead of writing this, you can replace with the row. Okay, so this row value, I will create one integer variable here. Okay, let's create one variable called R. I will start from 1. Okay, and this R value I will pass it here, so that it will create row with this number. So when I say 1, it will create a first row. Inside the first row, I'm creating the 0 cell and setting the value of location ID. Okay, so this is a XSSF row. So this is a duplicate variable it is showing, because we already created this variable. So I can no need to specify that. Okay, so this, as soon as it created this row, I'm incrementing the row value every time. Okay, because we need to increment the row, because as soon as I got the first row, I have to create first row, and we have to write all the data in the first row. So still we have to create multiple cells here. After completion of this, then we have to go and create another row, then we have to write another data. So here, like this, I can write multiple cells. So total, how many columns we have? 1 2 3 4 5 6. 3 4 5 6. So in the cell 0, I'll put a location ID. In the cell 1, in the same row, cell 1, I put a street address. In the cell 2, I'll put postal code, and number cell 3, I'll update city here, and cell number 4, I'll put state provenance, and last cell number 5, I'll put country ID. Okay, so this is how we can update the cells in the Excel file. So what I have done here, from the result set, we are capturing the first row data, and we created a new row in the Excel sheet. In this particular row itself, we have created multiple cells 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. In each and every cell, we have written this data, whatever we have captured here. Okay, so once it is done, then it will go up again, check the next record is available in the result set, and get the data from the second row, store them into these variables. Again, this will create a new row, and then again we will update the next data or next row data in the Excel sheet. So by the time this while loop is completed, we will have all the data in the Excel sheet. And finally, what we have to do, we have to write this workbook into file system. So for that, we have to create file output stream. Let's say FOS, new file output stream you have to create. And here, where exactly you have to create an Excel file, I have to specify the location. So I already have one folder called data files inside my project. So // representing your current project. Inside this, I say data files. Inside this, I'll give some name to my Excel file. I say locations.xlsx. So this is where we need to store the file. So import this file output stream, and then this will throw some exception. Just we need to, then we have to write this workbook into the file. So workbook dot write FOS. So after writing it, it will throw some exception, just add it. So after writing this data into the file output stream, then you can close the workbook, close the file. So I say workbook dot close, and then FOS dot close. And also we have opened the database connection. I'm also closing the connection. So this is how we need to write our code. So let me just repeat once again. So here we are going to read the data from the database table and store the same data into the Excel file. So first we need to establish the connection to the database by passing the connection string and database name, username and password. Then we have to create one statement object, and through that we can execute query select star from locations, and this will return all the data into this variable. And whatever data we have in the result set, we have to write the data into the Excel sheet. So that I need to create one empty workbook, empty sheet, then also have updated headers in the first row. Then I'm reading from row 1. So r equal to 1. So I'm updating the data from the row 1 because row 0 is having header part in the Excel sheet. So from the result set, I'm getting each and every record. That means each row. And from each row, I'm getting location ID, street address, postal code, city, state, province, country into multiple variables. And then I'm creating the new row in the sheet every time. In every iteration, I'm creating the new row in the sheet. So current value of r equal to 1. So it will create first row. In the second round, r value will be incremented by 1. So every round it will create a new row, because this value will be incremented by 1, 2, 3, 4, something like this. Okay, depends upon the data. So as soon as you created the row, create the cell 0 and write the location ID. Create cell 1, write the street address. Create cell 2, write the postal code. So similarly, I created multiple cells in the same row and write all the data. After completion of one iteration, then it will get another record from the table or result set, then get the data and write the data into the sheet. So this loop will repeat till it completes all the data from the result set. And finally, what we have done, we have created file input stream, which will create a new Excel file. And finally, we have written the workbook into file. Then we close all the connections. Okay, so finally, I'll write one confirmation message. I say done. Right, so this is how we need to write our code, which will read the data from database table and write the data into the Excel sheet. So let's run this code, and once you run this code, where exactly it will generate the Excel file, under data files, locations.xls file will be created. Inside that file, we can see the data, which will read from the database table. So if I run this query from the database, we got some data here, right? So the same data we can see in the Excel file. Now let me run the code, right click, run as Java application. All right, so now I have run my code, so it is done. So let me refresh my data files. Now we can see location.xls file is created. Now let's try to open this. Yes, now we can see this is my Excel file which is created. Let me just increase the font. Okay, now we can just look at this. We got all the data from the database. So location IDs, street address, postal codes, cities, state province, and country ID. All right, so this is how we can just read the data from the database table, and we can write that same data into the Excel file or Excel sheet. Okay, so that's all for this video, guys. In the next video, we will discuss another topic. Thanks for watching.